Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another garden video. Today is going to be a sit down garden video and I'm out here because I wanted to tell you 10 lessons that I learned on my first year gardening. So gardening this year has been a huge challenge for so many reasons, mostly due to the fact that I had to build an entire garden structure. So I've been looking back at my videos from the garden vlogs and just going from seeing this space being just a field of grass to what it is now is actually insane to me. Like, I actually get a little bit overwhelmed and emotional just thinking about how this was nothing and then now it is this, and that is due to hard work and dedication and good friends and family and waking up every day and choosing to do something big. I have grown a ton of food, a ton of flowers. Like, I have so many marigolds around the garden right now, and I'm just feeling so proud of myself for accomplishing this. And also I feel so proud that so many of you have started a garden journey after you were inspired by watching my videos. That is truly the greatest thing that I could ever hear from you, is that something I did inspired you to do the same, or, you know, get up and do something like this, whatever it is. Like, just knowing that my videos, I don't know, like, brought a change in your life in a positive way makes my heart swell and makes me want to cry. And I'm just so thankful for you guys for being so loyal and watching my videos, especially the garden vlogs. I feel like we have a little garden community here of people who just love to garden and love to help me and just love the art of growing food. So anyway, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you guys for that, because a lot of this was possible due to your recommendations and your help and everything like that. It is starting to sprinkle right now. Let's see if I can get through this before we have like a torrential downpour, because right now it just feels like little tiny sprinkles. So we're gonna go back to the beginning of everything to share this first tip, and that tip is to have a really good grow light setup when you're trying to start seeds. So this is something that I just shake my head at myself a lot over, because I started a lot of seeds at the beginning of this garden journey, and pretty much none of them made it. None of them survived. They did all sprout for the most part, but like, they didn't get much past that stage. And I started a lot of my seeds, well, at this point, all of my seeds outside, just direct sow. And most of the plants that I planted out here were perfect for that. They're actually meant to be directly sowed, so it was fine. But a lot of things I had to buy starts of, like my tomatoes back here, I bought starts of because my seedlings did not make it. And I think it's largely due to the fact that I didn't have them close enough to a grow light. I definitely have strong enough grow lights for this, I just didn't have them very close. And so in my research and your guys' help, I learned that you need to have the seedlings like very close to the grow lights so that they'll grow compactly and not super stretched out like mine were, because they stretched out and then they got thirsty and they flopped and then they never came back up, So it was sort of a mess and I was very sad and disappointed, but life goes on, and I had other seedlings that I started out here that were successful. But that's just a really big lesson for myself, setting myself up for success at the very beginning and starting those seeds with the best lighting and conditions possible. Lesson number 2, which I also learned the hard way, is to have as much delivered to you as possible. So when I first was filling up my garden beds, they are 12 inches tall, 8 feet long, 4 feet wide. So they're pretty big, and I actually had somebody build them for me because it was just cheaper to do it that way. Actually, there was a person on Facebook who was selling garden boxes, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's a lot cheaper than me going out and buying all this wood. Anyway, point is, when it came to filling them, I really had no idea what to do. And after after going through the process of filming the garden soil video with Shota from Tank's Green Stuff, I have a much better idea of what is needed from me as far as filling the boxes. And so what I ended up doing is I got bulk soil dropped into my truck and I brought it back home and I almost ruined the suspension on my truck because number one, I didn't think about how heavy that soil would be, and I only thought about like the capacity, like how much soil can fit in my truck, not how much soil should I put in my truck. And the company that I got it from like didn't say anything. I don't know if they just like, I don't know. It's not like it was their responsibility, but I feel like maybe, I don't know. I'm not trying to blame other people here, but it was definitely my fault that it happened. I clearly didn't know what I was doing, but hey, I digress. After that experience, I decided that I was just gonna do bagged soil, which ended up being like, I'm pretty sure, a bunch of peat moss. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay with the topsoil and the compost, but I could not find bags of compost, and it just became this whole thing, and I needed to get stuff into the beds, and yeah. So my lesson here is kind of like a twofold. Plan out your garden. Number one, like have these things planned out in advance. Like start the planning in like January, because when I started planning my garden, it was already into the growing season. Like I should have already had seeds started and all of that. And part of that was because the garden structure needed to be built. And also my husband got like a really bad head injury right when we were supposed to be building the garden. So that set us back a couple weeks too, which he's fully recovered from now. Thank God, he's much better. But you know, well, I wouldn't say fully recovered. He still has headaches sometimes, but not the point. So yeah, that was kind of like a bad timing for Daniel to get injured right when I really needed another hand, but life happens, and I had help from other people, which was amazing. Basically, it set me back, so I wasn't able to come out and like plan because my mind was in other places. So had I done that planning in like January, if things did come up, even, you know, during the growing season, I would have been prepared already. I would have already known what I needed to do. So I would definitely say make sure that you're planning things super well and far in advance, just in case something happens, and you can, you know, start new seeds or whatever else. I have some friends who start seeds like really early and put them out with like a grow tunnel outside. There's just so many ways that you can extend your grow season that I didn't even think about because my garden was not even up yet. So, you know, I'm giving myself grace because it wasn't even built yet, so I couldn't really do anything. But next year, I'm definitely going to be planning very early, and I'm actually probably going to start planning now, just thinking about what I want to grow and planning out where I want to grow it, and adding in more garden boxes and just fun stuff into this space to make it feel a little bit more special and, I don't know, intentional. Yeah. So back to the delivery thing. After the soil debacle, I ended up having the pea gravel, which is the rock that is on the ground of the garden. I had that delivered rather than picking it up in my truck, which I had planned on doing, and I'm very glad that I got it delivered. They had to deliver at the bottom of the hill, so that really sucked because I had to bring all of it up to the garden. I do have a like tractor mower, so that helped out a lot, but it's a lot of like scooping rock and spreading it over on this side of things. That's a part of building the garden structure, which I will not have to deal with next year. But I wish that I would have had like a bulk mulch, bulk soil dropped off at my house, because it's definitely worth the delivery fee if there is one. Some places will deliver for free, which I think is really cool. And buying it in bulk is a lot cheaper than buying it in bags, because I filled up basically 2 garden boxes for $80 with bulk stuff, and then when I went to fill in the other 2, it was probably like $200 with the bags. It was just way more expensive, but at that point I just needed to get stuff into the boxes and like did not have the emotional or like tactical energy to figure out the bulk thing again. My next tip, which is more so on the garden structure thing, sorry, there's a lot of lessons in that and a little bit less with the plants, because once it actually came down to planting the plants, it was very easy. So if you are a new gardener or you're looking at this thinking about if you want to garden or not, I would say actually planting the plants is the easiest part of all of this. Like, you plant them, you water them, and then they grow. And sometimes you don't even need to water them because it rains enough, depending on where you live. So that part is very easy, but I will get to those sort of tips in a second. But my garden structure, when I was mapping it out, the way that I mapped out how big it was going to be was with the landscaping fabric. So I didn't square it off or anything like that, which is something that you need to do. So if and when I build another garden structure like this, depending on where my next house is, if we stay here, I I don't know what the future holds for us. I'm going to very, very thoughtfully and purposefully square off the garden area, because when it came to putting in all of the posts, you can see I have a bunch of posts around. It was very difficult and time consuming to figure that all out after the fact. Like when we were actually had the auger rented and we were digging the holes, we had to waste a lot of time to square off the space. So I would suggest getting some of that string with like chalk on it. You basically just pull the string and then it hits the ground and leaves a mark. We did end up like having a little bit of miscalculation on the boards and the spacing and everything, and I really think that's because I didn't pre-plan it and we were just trying to do it really quickly because we only had the auger for so many hours and it was really hot that day as well. So again, with the planning, like if I would have planned this out in advance and actually come out here to do it, because I did a lot of my planning in the house and on my computer, which is fine for that, but definitely before you like rent the auger, before you buy all your supplies, make sure that you map it out so you know actually where you're going to put all the holes, make sure that it's squared off and all of these things. This might sound kind of obvious, but it was not something that I thought about at the time. I was just really more focused on getting the soil in the boxes and starting to plant, and I didn't really think about the fact that I was building a structure and you need to have, you know, there's specific things that you need to do to make sure that that structure build is successful, and I did not do a lot of those things. Okay, so speaking of the landscaping cloth, I, for some reason, got a lot of comments from people saying that the landscaping cloth was a waste of money and time, but I'm here to tell you that it was not. So if you are considering starting a garden in a place where there's a lot of grass, I would suggest putting down landscaping cloth to map out the area, square it off, but you know, put the landscaping cloth in and then add on rock on top of it or something like that. Make sure that I wanted to do it this way so that I wasn't having to constantly mow between my garden beds and come in here and like weed whack through the garden. I just wanted to not worry about that. And I have had to do a little bit of weeding, but it honestly is nothing compared to other parts of my house. Like this was fully a field of grass before I put this here. I mean, it's still a field of grass around it. So it worked very, very well, and there was no grass that came up. It was just weeds, and the weeds were coming in probably from like the wind blowing the little seeds in here, and then they planted in. It was not from the grass like coming up through the landscape fabric. So I feel like I needed to say that because I got a lot of comments saying that that was pointless, and then I got comments saying that it wasn't. So I wanted to like once and for all tell you it was a good method of suppressing the grass and the weeds, and I really have had minimal issues. Okay, so for planting, the first thing that I have to say about planting is make sure that you actually spread out your plants based on the seed packet's instructions. For some reason, I thought, I know more than this seed packet. I don't need to spread out my zucchini. And then I had 4 zucchini plants growing into each other like this. I put 4 zucchini plants in a 4 foot by 4 foot area. Like half of one of my garden boxes, I planted 4 zucchini. And I think that I planted them thinking that I would like take out one of them or something. Like I thought that I would thin it out or something, and I didn't end up doing that. I don't know why. Can't really speak for past me. But the point is, make sure that you are spreading out your seeds accordingly. And just on the note of zucchini, you only need 1 zucchini plant for 1 family. I promise. I don't know why I planted 4 because yeah, it was way too many zucchini, and I was considering like going and stuffing them in people's mailboxes, and I feel bad for letting some of them go to waste, but there was literally so many of them. I have had zucchini in every form possible. I even have some frozen in the freezer for the winter, and I still have like 4 massive zucchinis on my countertop. So 1 zucchini plant, okay, I promise it will provide for you very, very well. Other plants that I didn't really space out was my watermelon and pumpkins, and my watermelon kind of like went off on its own, and the pumpkin kind of went off on its own. But I think that it would have been better if I spread them out a little bit more thoughtfully and had more space for the plants when they became adults, because the plants, they grow really, really fast and they get very big. And that was something that I just was not expecting. I have never really been inside of a full growing like vegetable garden before. I've seen them online. I watch people on YouTube. My mom has grown tomatoes and like peppers throughout my life, but never like squash or, you know, things that get really big. So I had no concept of how big these things would actually be for myself. And I figured that I had a lot of space out here, so it would probably be fine. And it was fine for the most part, but those vining plants that like to climb and do better that way, I didn't really have anything set up for them. So that kind of leads me into the next one, which is have those things set up in advance. So make sure that you know the growth habit of the plant and then structure your garden around that. So I'm going to be adding in some trellises. I'm going to be adding in some support systems, basically because I want to continue to grow watermelon, like just melons. I love melons. That was like my favorite part of the garden this year, but I want to continue to grow them, but I want to make sure that they are going to be successful and have what they need to grow their best, because my watermelon just grew a lot of leaves and not very many actual watermelons. And I think that might be due, well, it could be due to a lot of things, but I think part of it is that it didn't really have anything to like latch on to. I don't know. But I only got like 4 watermelons this year, and maybe that's pretty typical. But because I planted everything so close, it's actually hard to tell what was growing off of what. So I don't know which plants were successful. It's just confusing. So make sure that you like spread things out and plan accordingly to the plant's growth habit at the beginning. Now, when the plants actually start growing, something that is going to happen, you know, if you live in the Midwest area, depending on where you live, is powdery mildew and bugs. So yeah, powdery mildew took out half of my garden, easily half of it. And then aphids took out the other half. So I had a lot of plants die because of that. And number one, with the aphids, I don't know if it was aphids or if it was caterpillars, because I was actually looking over there. It's this box right here that was just like completely ruined. I don't know if it was aphids or caterpillars, because when I was looking over there, I saw a bunch of caterpillars on one of the plants. And I was like, is this what it is? I'm confused. But basically, when I would see things going wrong with the plants, I would kind of just ignore it because I thought it would go away, which seems so silly to say. But yeah, I kind of would just ignore it and pretend like it wasn't happening. And then the powdery mildew started on the zucchini, which apparently is very, very classic, especially like in my area. You kind of just expect that your zucchini will get powdery mildew. It's not like an if, it's a when. So now I know that for next year, and I'll be able to prepare accordingly. And apparently it's really easy to just like get rid of and control, which is silly to know now because I could have prevented this from getting a lot worse, but live and learn, you know? So yeah, basically when you see these types of things, make sure that you take care of it right away. There's lots of products online. If you want to use chemicals, if you want to go like the natural route, there's also things that you can mix at home. It's the same with houseplants. And for some reason, I thought that it would be different with the garden. I don't know why. I mean, I was the same way with houseplants in the beginning. Like, I thought that I was never going to have a pest. I thought that I was invincible. And then it happened to me, and I was like, excuse me, like, these spider mites have the audacity to like kill half my collection. And it's the same with the powdery mildew this year. Like, powdery mildew had the audacity to kill half my collection, or half my garden, which really sucked. And I could have prevented it. But again, next year, I will know. This next tip is to have a drip irrigation installed in your garden right away. So I don't have drip irrigation in my garden right now because my water source is a little bit further away from the garden than I would have wanted, but I didn't want to build the garden in any other place. This was really like a super good spot for it. So basically, I wasn't able to put in drip irrigation, but I'm going to look into getting it installed and getting a water line brought up to the garden. It can't be that expensive. I mean, it just can't be. I don't know. And if it is, it'll be worth it, I think, because I really need to figure something out to make this a better situation so that the plants are consistently getting water, because for a couple months there, it was very, very, very dry here. And I was kind of relying on the rain to water my garden most of the time, which was fine, except for like probably July and August and a little bit of September. It was just really dry here, and I wasn't expecting that because it rains a lot in Missouri. And specifically where I live, it rains a lot. I wish that I had a drip irrigation, number one, so that the plants could get that consistent watering, and number two, so that I wasn't like overhead watering, which is another reason I think why I got powdery mildew pretty badly, because that that brings moisture on the leaves that isn't necessary. And also powdery mildew can happen just with like morning dew and things like that, just depending on where you live, obviously. But yeah, I think that I made it worse by the way that I was watering. So if I can't get drip irrigation, I'm just going to make sure to not get water on the leaves as best I can, just to make sure that I'm not like creating an environment for fungus, is it fungus? I don't know, for powdery mildew to exist on my plants. And even more than that, I just want to make sure that I'm able to get them that consistent water that they need. All right, the last tip that I have for you, and something that I got questions about so much, is my outfits while I'm gardening. At the beginning of my garden, I was out here working in like street clothes and just like very basic workout clothes, and I found that it just wasn't good for this type of work. And so I went online and I bought a couple of pairs of overalls secondhand. I got them off of Etsy actually, because I was having a really hard time finding them in person. And I didn't want to buy brand new overalls like from the store because, number one, they never fit me well. I have a very long torso and short legs, so it's just usually like when I put it on, it just is really tight on the crotch area. And there's not enough like to get all the way up to the top here. So that's a consistent issue for me. So I didn't want to go and spend a ton of money on ill-fitting overalls. So I just bought some overalls off of Etsy that were slightly oversized. Actually, one of them is oversized. The other one fits me like a glove, and I'm so happy about it. But point is, make sure that you have proper clothing for this. I mean, you don't need to go out and spend a ton of money on it, but make sure that you have clothing that you can get dirty, and also like good hat sun protection, because I didn't do that at the beginning and I got a lot of sunburns, and I don't want to get a lot of sunburns because I'm sure that older me is gonna really hate me if I keep letting that happen. So I have a really good SPF. I use Tula face sunscreen and it's amazing. I love it. It never makes me feel greasy or anything. It has a, you know, nice texture to it as well. And I have a really big like sun hat as well. I got from Hemlock Hat Co. So just make sure that you are adequately dressed for the experience. Again, you don't need to go out and spend a ton of money, but there are some things that I think are helpful, and one of them is overalls for sure, because you can just take it all off when you get inside and throw it on the hook and put it back on when you go back outside again. I have some like quilted overalls for winter time and they are extremely warm. So yeah, I think having like good overalls, good sun protection is extremely important because you are outside a lot. And I didn't have to do as much weeding as I expected, so I wasn't outside like bent over doing that, but maybe like some sort of like knee pad for yourself. I just want to say like protect your body while you're doing this, because we only get one body, you know. We want to be careful with her and make sure that she's taken care of and everything else. So I think that is all I have to say about this. So thank you very much for watching this video, and most of all just joining in on this journey with me, this garden journey. The season is pretty much over. I do have some fall crops that I've planted, but I'm just really excited to see if they'll even happen, if they'll even come up. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to think about how garden vlogs are going to look moving forward. I think that I might just add in the garden content into regular plant videos because it's not enough to make an entire video about. So I'll probably just update on the fall crops in regular videos and on Instagram as well. So if you're not following me on Instagram, definitely check that out and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss new videos. If you have any lessons that you learned on your first year gardening or just this year in gardening in general, like if you had, you know, something that you learned new this year that you didn't know previously, you should leave it in the comments below so that I can learn from you and that everybody else can learn from you too, because I think that that is what is so important, is to learn from each other and to continue fostering that environment where like we learn from each other, we're sharing information, because that is how this stuff stays alive. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye!